Well, for everybody else, welcome back to Homeroom. It is October 26th, and we are going to spend a bit of time at the top talking about COVID. But remember this name, Wilton Gregory, moving on up in the world. But first, let's get with some COVID stuff. So, this is important. Most of my followers are concerned about COVID, and so I definitely want to make sure that you're updated, not only about what's going on here, but how it affects what's going on around the world. So there is a surge, fam, and it's coming. At this point, we are up to 225,000 dead, 8.6 million cases. And now the COVID outbreak has made its way into the vice president's office. Vice President Pence, who is, by the way, the head of the COVID task force, has at least 5 people in his office that have tested positive for COVID. At the same time, the head of the coronavirus task force refuses to quarantine himself. And I guess you can't really be mad because if you have to choose between politics and science, it seems like politics always wins. Why? There's a week before the election, and rather than do what science is, which is quarantine yourself, do as much as you can virtually, he is still out there on the campaign trail. Technically, his argument is that I am testing negative, which appears to be true. At the same time, though, the three keys to keeping this thing under control, according to the scientists, are number one, test, trace, and isolate. Make sure you do your testing. We're actually doing pretty good on testing. I'll give Trump a shout out to that. The tracing, though, contact tracing is a problem because once you know that you've been in contact with a person who's had COVID, you are supposed to isolate yourself. Pence is not following that protection. The other two pieces to what they call the three keys to success: piece one, test, trace, isolate. Two, community engagement. That means people in the community are choosing to wear their mask, choosing to socially distance, choosing to keep their hands clean with warm soapy water. And then the third piece is the issue of leadership. Our leadership modeling what we should be doing so that we can get clear signals on how to behave appropriately. Sadly, we're not hitting all those three with our current leadership, and so maybe this election indicates time to change. But let's change it to a more global perspective. There are surges that are happening across the world, and so I give a big shout out to some of the urban centers that I've done work in: Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, New Orleans, Atlanta, the entire DMV area. I just want to give all of you guys my thoughts and prayers, as I know that COVID will be coming and it will be affecting our individual families in one way or another. But let's take a look at Europe. Spain has declared a state of emergency across the nation, implementing a nationwide curfew that starts, I believe, at 6 p.m. for them. Italy has also put a curfew on restaurants and bars. They have to close at 6 p.m. as well. I think I said p.m. earlier. Gyms, pools, movie theaters, places like that are closed, period. France, they have broken records and are now over 10,000 dead. In Poland, the president has tested positive, but he is at least trying to follow those three keys so that his population can keep things under control. So COVID is out, it is about, and it is going to get more aggressive as winter comes. But I did, in all of my research, obviously is by white media organizations, I don't hear about Africa. And so I did some intentional research and said, well, what is going on in COVID in Africa? Now, let the white people tell it. They aren't doing the testing, and so therefore Africans don't have good data. Okay, that's them. But what do the Africans say? Well, according to the Africans, things are going extremely well, given the circumstances, right? And so I just want to highlight 5 things that I found that came out of research and reports dealing with COVID as it relates to Africa. Number one, as a continent, clearly it's hard to stereotype, but in general, African countries started taking quick action. The first country in the continent to lock down their borders started in February, and it made its way through the continent relatively quickly. Second reason why we don't see too many cases in Africa is the huge amount of public support. One study says that there has been an increase in hand washing. Let me say this was a survey of people. They've increased their hand washing. They have increased their reduction of contact with other people. They've increased mask wearing. Similarly, in that same study, what has decreased has been attendance at church and public events being organized, right? And so these are some things that the community is doing to keep the spread down. Also, because of its geography, it's a warmer climate. And so, as you know, winter drives people indoors. Being indoors is what increases the transmission rates. Number four, I found that they have plenty of virus outbreak experience. We could go down the list, but there are plenty of viruses that have made its way through. So many African countries are familiar with how these sorts of outbreaks go and how they're handled. And one of the things that I do want to do more research on that I was pleasantly surprised to hear is that many African countries have very good public health systems. And so they are ready to respond when things like this happen. So overall, and I'm talking about Nigeria, even though there's a lot of social conflict out there, we're not getting serious reports. The biggest one is in South Africa, which is it's got a lot of white people in there. So I don't know if that has any correlation, but I looked into Kenya, Ghana, Morocco. I've looked into a lot of countries, Morocco being close to Europe, but even there is not a significant surge. So, is it a matter of testing and they just don't have the data, which is why it looks that way? Or can Africans actually get credit for doing the right things the right way? I guess it just depends on who you are listening to. Next, Colorado and the fires. So the fires, there's two of them. One is called the Cameron Peak, and the other is called the East Troublesome Fire. These things are still raging. They are difficult to control. Luckily, over the weekend, there was a little bit of snow, and so it did slow the process, but it hasn't stopped yet. Also in California, remember, these fires are still going strong as well. And with the seasonal change means there will be more wind. More wind means stronger fires. So it looks like we are not out of the woods just yet in California. In white on white crime, I am very proud to let you know that one Boogaloo boy has been arrested. He was found to be the cause of a destruction to a police precinct during the Black Lives Matter protests out there in Minneapolis. It was actually a white boy who has been charged and hopefully will get convicted for firing into the Minnesota police precinct. The Boogaloo Boys, one person describes them as promoting and conducting violent acts in the hope of sparking a civil war with the government. So I'm very curious to unpack that. If anybody wants to talk about it, let me know in the chat, because it doesn't seem like it's our problem. It seems like these white boys are trying to go against the white government in order to accomplish some goal, which I'm not clear about. But what I do know is we allies need to really be aware of what's going on and prepare ourselves for a major eventuality. So far, the organization has been associated with 25 arrests, 5 deaths, and I'm going to leave it at that because I do want to get into... I'm going to do my moving on up. I just want to give a special shout out to the Catholic Archbishop out there in Washington, D.C. His name is Wilton Gregory. He is one of 13 people who have just been promoted by the Catholic Pope up to the rank of Cardinal, the first African American to have achieved that rank. He has been very vocal about supporting Black lives. He has been very vocal about Trump, and especially that time that Trump went out and had his whole security guard clear a pathway so he could take a picture in front of a church. You remember that? Cardinal Gregory was not very happy with that. So big up to you, Mr. Gregory. But I did want to kind of round this out with the issue of the Supreme Court and issues of voting. As you know, that's very important and timely these days. So I just want to start by saying, listen, white people be on time. They don't know nothing about being fashionably late, okay? Because Donald Trump, no matter what you can say about him, he has put 3 Supreme Court justices on the court during his first term. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment considering they are lifetime appointments. And, I was watching some news and looking into Miss Amy Barrett, and please keep in mind, they are on time. They pushed her through the Judiciary Committee, even though they technically didn't have a quorum. Somehow they figured out how to get past that rule. I'm still trying to figure that out. Now it's making its way to the Senate, and supposedly Mitch McConnell is going to be getting the Senate to vote on her confirmation as early as today. So it may be possible that we're going to have a new Supreme Court justice in before the election. And it's also possible that she will be seeing cases related to the election, which is also very interesting. And speaking of Mitch McConnell, if you have some time, why don't you do a quick Google search of Mitch McConnell's hands? Ooh. Something ain't right with old boy. Now, I know that white people, when they get older, they start having skin that looks weird because they're so pale. But, ooh, this situation don't look good. I'll give you a list of possibilities so that you can prepare yourself for what you might see. Some call it a skin condition. It's also possible that he has something wrong with his lymph nodes, and so lymph fluid is swelling up his hands. Could be a lack of oxygen to the area, maybe because his blood vessels are constricting and not letting oxygen to flow either to the hands or to the whole body. So, for example, if his body's not getting enough oxygen, then it would sacrifice the extremities first. That might be what's going on. Could be bruising. Maybe he's gotten into a fight. Could be that he's a pregnant woman and we just didn't know. They're very sensitive to bruising. Could be photo op. Maybe there's a conspiracy and somebody has photoshopped his hands to look that way. I'm not sure. But the situation don't look good. He's downplaying it, saying that it's no big deal and that everybody needs to get off his back about it. Last thing I want to talk about is voting. Voting is underway. Last night, I had the distinct privilege of hosting a California Propositions Town Hall where we brought community members together to argue their positions on some of the propositions. Two in particular we got into was Prop 22, which is about the gig worker economy and whether they should be classified as employees, and also Prop 18, which deals with whether or not 17-year-olds should be given the opportunity to vote. We plan on doing another interesting conversation on Wednesday. If you'd like to learn more, I will try to hit you up either in the chat or I'll try to post it somewhere, but definitely find out about that. In terms of voter suppression, these are the things you need to be aware of. Dropbox sites, whether they're real or fake, and where they are. Don't take it for granted because there may be fewer than you think there should be. Mail ballot signatures could be an issue. That's a way that they're going to try to invalidate ballots. And then due to COVID, there's a lot of controversy on whether or not they are going to accept late mail-in ballots. Some say they should, others say that they shouldn't. But in terms of today, it is Monday, so I do offer to you a brief motivational message, and that message revolves around this one idea. And that idea was, it wasn't it's you, it wasn't it's hard. The idea was we, yes, fam. I wanted to invoke the wise words of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said, I may not get there with you, but I believe we as a people will make it to the promised land. Now, he didn't make it with us. He was right about that. And I believe that we are on our way to the promised land. We have to make our way out of this desert, and it seems like the paradigm is shifting. What I want to emphasize is the we. The only way that we can get there is together, right? There's an old saying, if you want to go if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And we've got a long way to go. And so we've got to go together. And so I just want you to be reflective on your relationships. Who is your we? Because at a time when health is at a very risky position, whether or not family members are going to get COVID and how to spread, whether or not to show up to events, who is your we? Who's in that struggling with you? When you think about the economy and how it is struggling and how there are people who are not able to make the ends meet, this is when the we come together to provide that support to your family and friends who might need it. When you think about our mental health and the idea that we are isolated with people that we love, who is your we? Who are those people that are on your team that are trying to negotiate through healthy relationships with you? When we think about our we struggling with, going back to school and trying to do this distance learning and learning new ways, whether on your job or in your passion, new ways of doing things. Who is your we? Who is that community of people that's coming around just to let you know that we got your back, that we are in this together, that we are going to be okay? So I just want to remind you that we cannot do it alone. We are not islands amongst ourselves. Rather, we are the key to success. We can do it if we do it together. All right, fam. Remember your people. Make sure you get some sun today. Try to get some exercise, some fresh air, and also be your best self. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out.